Ah in the Hebrew is the et that represents the word of Yahuwah. So we must work our field and trim our vineyards in order to effect change in our lives. But as we will find in the next verse, we must also allow the land, our lives, to find rest where we do not do these things. We have to ask, well, if I don't do anything or take care of the fields and the vineyards, they'll be overrun by the beast thorns and the thistles. So we're going to take a look at the next verse to find out if this is true. What this is teaching us is that we don't need to rely solely on ourselves. That we have Yahu Elohim that's right there if we will simply take the time to recognize that presence. And people ask me all the time, he says, well, what does that have to do with anything? How does this Yahu Elohim that's right there do anything? And first thing I have to ask myself is, what? Do I believe that Yahu Elohim exists? Second thing I need to do is, if I do believe that Yahu Elohim exists, then I have to believe. I have to believe that I can see. Then Yahshua said, then let it be done unto you according to your belief. I have to be able to take the time to believe. I have to take the time to build a relationship with something greater than myself, and then believe that it will act. Is my saying, this is never going to happen, there's no way I'm going to be able to pay for that, I'm going to get sick, you're going to get sick, is that belief? So we go back to the question, how do I know that Yahuwah Elohim is always present? I say, thank you, Yahuwah, that this bill is going to be paid. Thank you, Yahuwah Elohim, that I feel great today, right now, and I'm going to feel great tomorrow. Thank you, Yahuwah Elohim, that my friend is feeling good today. Because now I'm building a relationship with something that's greater than I am. Otherwise, do I believe that Yahuwah Elohim even exists? So poor, pitiful me, everything's miserable, life is bad. See what I'm getting at? We have to be able to trim the fruit. Get rid of the thorns and the thistles. But what happens when we don't take the time to trim it? What happens when we take that rest? Because we're commanded to take the rest. It tells us twice, rest. And verse 4 says, but in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of solemn rest for the land, a Sabbath unto Yahuwah. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard. Well, that's it. It's all going to go south. The animals are going to come and they're going to trample it all. I'm going to have thorns and thistles everywhere. And what am I doing? I'm speaking one negative thing into my life right after the other. Why is Elohim telling us to stop? Well, let's find out. The word for 7th is Hash-Shevi'it, that comes from the root Shibiyim, meaning 70. Now 70 is a numerical value of ayin that means to perceive. Now another root of Hash-Shevi'it is Shavah, that means to take an oath or to make a promise by an oath. The word for years, as we've discovered earlier, illustrates to us the making of changes. So in the phrase 7th year, we can formulate an idea of making changes according to the promise of our oath. So what is our oath? We discussed in previous studies, or we discussed in the previous verse, several changes that we should consider. Now, our oath is the Shema. Well, that's a statement. And we've talked about the Shema a number of times. It's more than a statement. It's saying, I am going to perceive I am going to distinguish. I am going to understand. And then once I perceive, distinguish, and understand, I am going to obey, apply, and then be content that Yahweh Elohim is greater than I am, and everything there is, was, and will be, today, yesterday, and tomorrow, and that Yahweh is Echad, that he is in agreement with his word. Maybe I should be in agreement with his word as well. It's an oath. I make this oath 3 times a day. Something to consider. I get to wrap myself up in the lovely talit that Lorene made for me. And I think about the Shema. But that's another thing. But what it's telling me here is that in my day, or we discussed it, okay, our oath is the Shema, that we have to answer honestly. In my day-to-day planning and trimming, do I stop to consider my oath? This verse is issuing a commandment to take time away from sowing and pruning, to rest in Yahuwah. We again see the word la Yahuwah, which illustrates the instruction and the guidance in everything and every time in our existence that can only come from Yahuwah, our Elohim. The Shema requires us to look carefully and to pay attention to where we are in our relationship with Yahweh Elohim, and it forces us to look at what changes we need to make. Am I perceiving it? What don't I understand? What do I need to look at more intensely to understand? Am I speaking a whole bunch of negatives into my life that, according to Yahshua, said, I'm giving you the keys to the reign of Elohim, so that whatever you bind here will be bound in heaven. And whatever you lose here, well, we'll let it go. Am I speaking a bunch of negative garbage into my life that Elohim says, okay, that's what you want. I have to respect what you say because you have the keys. Lock up when you're done. Or do I say, I break that curse in the name of Yahshua? I break that negative gook, them thorns and thistles that I just allowed into my life. Do I break those in the name of the redemption, to buy myself back, or to allow myself to be bought back from the slavery I sold myself into, to be delivered from the garbage I just spoke into my life, and to be restored back to where I should be, because I caught myself, I made teshuvah, and I said, I repent. But we don't learn to do this if we don't take the time to leave our vineyard and to leave our fields over here and go over here and find our rest in Yahuwah Elohim. We have to be able to do this. So, now I've totally lost myself. So in our day-to-day planning and trimming, do I stop and consider my oath? This verse is issuing a commandment to take time away from the sowing and pruning and rest in Yahuwah. The Shema requires us to look carefully and pay attention to where we are in our relationship with Yahuwah, and it forces us to look at what changes we have to make. This verse is a commandment to rest from tending to your physical existence and to take time with Yahweh Elohim to learn from his word and be nourished by his Ruach. This is the separate commandment from keep Shabbat. Shabbat has existed from creation. If we read the Torah, it's existed from before the Adam was created and placed into the garden. It was created to take care of us, not for us to make a whole bunch of rules to say you can't walk more than 1,000 paces, you can't flip a light switch on, you can't turn the stove on. These things, you can't press the button, yeah. The hotels in Jerusalem, they tear the toilet paper up for you on Shabbat. I've never been there, but they tell me that you walk into the bathroom, they're all stacked up neatly for you, so you don't have to unroll it yourself. The rabbis made a lot of silly rules. And I say that we rest in Yahuwah Elohim. And I'll get in trouble for this, but I'll say it. If you find your rest going out and digging in the dirt in your garden, rest digging in the dirt in your garden. I was telling Trina the other day, I like mowing the grass because all I have to do is keep the thing straight, turn it around, keep the thing straight this way, turn it around. Miss Dot can't see. She mows her grass because she knows. She just keeps it straight, turns it around, and she can look back with the vision that she sees, and she can look back and see if there's straight lines, and she says, I mowed the grass. What I'm getting at is when I mow the grass, I don't think about stuff that I'm worried about. What a better time to reflect on where my relationship is with something greater than myself. I find rest in mowing the grass. So we have to get away from the heavy weights that the rabbis put on us and understand that this is time that we spend with Yahuwah Elohim, to rest in Him. But that's Shabbat. This is telling us something totally different. It's telling us to get away from our existence, get away from us, me, I, yo, and step over into His existence and spend quality time with Yahuwah Elohim, asking questions. Where am I? What do I need to change? The 7th year. Where am I in my oath? According to my oath, what do I need to change in my oath? There we go. I've gotten all lost again. We don't have to wait 7 years to do it. We must do this on a daily basis. We must look at Scripture as instruction and not get bogged down on topical stories or topical storylines. Otherwise, we simply plant in our outdoor garden for 6 years and don't have anything to do with it on the 7th year. And topically, like I said, these verses are great. They give us good gardening advice. You got to let your land rest so that it'll yield a good crop the next time around. So what does our taking time to realize our oath in the Shema to Yahweh do for us? Well, we go to the next verse to find out. It says, that which grows of itself from your harvest you shall not reap, and the grapes of your undressed vine you shall not gather. It shall be a year of solemn rest for the land. Just without going into anything, based on what we've talked about, we can start to get a glimmer of an idea of what this says. It says, that which grows of itself from your harvest you shall not reap, and the grapes of your undressed vine you shall not gather. Leave your physical stuff alone. Come and spend time with me. We can consider it topically and get an answer to our question. It forces us to stop, and then it forces us to realize that our existence does not come from our efforts. This isn't to say that what we do physically doesn't help, but we are forced to recognize that it's because Yahuwah is present that our efforts come to fruition. Here we must take the time to stop focusing on what I can do and consider what Yahuwah Elohim has done for you and will continue to do for you if you will seek to build and maintain a relationship with Him. Taking this time will feed you and build you up, which is what we learn from the next verse. Why do we take time away from our physical existence? To allow Elohim to feed us, to put His talit around us and protect us from all the garbage that we've allowed to build up, to nourish us, to bring us rest, so that we can go back into our physical existence empowered to do it. We go to Elohim so that he'll give us strength, and then he strengthens us to go back out. There's a difference in those two. But if we don't go to get strength, then we end up getting weak, and then we end up getting beat up in our lives, and we end up freaking out, stressing out, and wigging out over the kanim, the little bitty bug that attaches itself and bites, that has a root, kana, that means the root of a giant tree, the third plague of Egypt. Right? So, verse 6 says, "And the Sabbath produce of the land shall be food for you." So, the verse above it, "That which grows of itself from your harvest you shall not reap." But here it says, "The Sabbath produce of the land shall be for food for you." Is there a difference? The fruit that I make, I need to set aside. The Sabbath food, the food that Elohim feeds me, is going to be good for me. For you and for your servant and for your maid and for your hired servant, for the settler by your side that resides with you. So when we take the time to rest in Yahuwah Elohim and allow him to feed us, we pass this blessing along to others. This verse and the next don't require a whole lot of exploration for us to understand. I find my rest in Elohim. I'm strengthened in Elohim. I get the strength I need to go out. And because I've taken the time to ask myself where I am and grow in my relationship with Yahuwah Elohim, then I go out and I positively affect the lives of other people around me. More than just, I don't have a maid. But if I did, I'm sure that it would affect him or her. We'd get a gentleman's gentleman, right? So, the next verse, "And for your cattle and for your beasts that are in your land shall all the increase from it be for food." And there's the little S thingy I was talking about. So this verse, taken topically, would tell us that here come the cattle and the beasts of the field, and they're going to grow. They're going to eat everything that grows wild, everything that you haven't bothered to, they're going to chew it all up. But what we have to take away from this is that when we make changes in our lives and we increase because we allow Yahuwah Elohim to lead us and to guide us, we also affect change even in those who in our eyes are incapable of learning. If I say that person's incapable of learning, I've just not only broke the first 3 commandments, but I've also stepped all over the 4th, 5th, and 6th commandment, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th commandment, and I might as well just go ahead and throw the 10th one in there too. I break all the commandments when I make myself Elohim. And when I step on somebody else, I do the same thing. So I cannot say that person's incapable of learning. All I can do is do what I can. We all have beasts in our lives, but we must love them as we love ourselves. It forces us to rethink our perception because, as Yahshua said, for men it is impossible, but for Elohim nothing is impossible. And that's at Matthew 19:26. Let me just read that because there's a story that goes behind it. And if I can turn the page on the thingy here. He's talking about the rich young ruler, and he goes, says, what do I have to do to get into the kingdom of Elohim and all this? And he says, well, keep the commandments. He says, well, I've done that. So he says, okay, well, sell everything you have and then follow me. And it says that in verse 22, and when the young man heard the word, he went away sad because he had many possessions. And Yahshua said to his Talmudim, truly I say to you that it is hard for a rich man to enter into the realm of Shemaim. And again, I say unto you, it is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go into the reign of Elohim. That statement right there. It's easier from our Greek translation for a camel to go through the eye. Aramaic, it says it's easier to put a thick rope through the eye of a needle. Either way that you look at it, it means the same thing. There's small gates into Jerusalem. If your camel is overloaded, you have to take stuff off the camel in order to get it through these little gates called the eyes. But if you're trying to put a thick rope through the eye of a needle, you have to unravel it until you get down to the right size that'll fit through the needle. What it's telling us is that in order for someone to get into the kingdom of Elohim, they have to unwind themselves. They have to get rid of all the garbage that keeps them from fitting in through the entrance. You have to unload your camel. Now that's a statement. The word for gimel, or the word for camel in Hebrew is gimel, the third letter of the alphabet that means great, that means wealthy, that means stable. You have to unload your own wealth, your own stability, in order to perceive Elohim's, and then make it through the eye of the needle. But it's really cool. But then he goes on to say, the Talmudim heard it, they were very astonished, saying, who then is able to be redeemed, delivered, restored? And looking intently, Yahshua said to them, with man this is impossible, but with Elohim all is possible. We have to take the time away from our day-to-day in order to build a relationship with Yahuwah Elohim. We are the only Bible that some people will ever see. The only Bible that some people will ever read. We must become a living example of the truth, power, and the ability of Yahuwah Elohim. And in order to do that, we have to let our fields remain fallow so that we can go back and plant fresh fruit. We have to take that time away to spend with Yahuwah Elohim in order for us to be regenerated, get more nitrogen in our soil or whatever we need in order to plant fruit that's going to yield good seed. So with that, I guess we could say grooviness has been achieved, and I can get rid of the ear thingies